I'm standing outside the Shaw Center in Ottawa, where members of independent Jewish voices have come to protest a 2-day conference against anti-Semitism. They say that this conference is equating Zionism and anti-Semitism and normalizing ties with Israel and Israel's occupation of Palestine.
Jews against genocide, die, 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 not in our name.
We're sorry to bother you. There's a genocide on, unfortunately. Yeah. Jews against genocide!
Jews against genocide!
Jews against genocide! Jews against genocide! Jews against genocide! Jews against genocide! Jews against genocide! Jews against genocide!
I'm taking photos, guys. And then we'll go.
Genocide! Jews against genocide! Jews against genocide! Jews against genocide! Jews against genocide!
Jews against genocide, not in our name. 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 genocide to end! Jews against genocide! Not in our name! 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 Palestinians are not our enemy! 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 Stop the bombs! 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 Stop the bombs!
Then what's the point? I'm done.
Stop the bombs! Stop the bombs! Stop the bombs! Stop the bombs! Jews against genocide, not in our name. 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 Jews against genocide, not in our name.
Is not united behind Israel's horrific attack on Gaza. We are here to show Jewish community leaders and Jews from around the country that there are so many of us that are advocating for Palestinian lives Jewishly. There are other ways to be. You don't need to stand blindly behind Israeli terror.
And why here? Why today?
We are here today because there are hundreds of politicians that are coming to this conference that is saying that anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism, and we are Jews here saying that is simply not the truth. We need to allow serious critique of Israel currently conducting ethnic cleansing, land theft, and genocide in Gaza and the West Bank, and we need to speak out against it for our Jewish principles and for humanity.
Amen. Jews have a responsibility to prevent genocide. Never again means never again for anyone.
Never again for anyone.
We are terrified and horrified by the impending genocide of Palestinians in Gaza that is being prepared to be committed in our name. We're here, not in our name. We're here to let other Jews know that there is a large community of anti-Zionist Jews who do not stand behind the state of Israel's genocide and apartheid, and we're here to invite all Jews of conscience to join us in standing against genocide.
There is no military way to peace and Jewish safety in Israel.
Jewish liberation is inherently tied to Palestinian liberation. None of us will be free until Palestine is free. Stop the genocide.
Why this conference linked to anti-Semitism?
This conference has the explicit goal of pushing a definition of anti-Semitism that includes anti-Zionism, which allows for the criminalization of peaceful protest and resistance against the Israeli state's political choices. We believe that when peaceful resistance against apartheid is criminalized, it encourages violent resistance to apartheid. We believe that we need to stand in solidarity with the Palestinian victims of apartheid who are peacefully protesting their situation, and that by ending occupation, ending apartheid, is the only way, the only path to peace for all people in the Middle East. We believe that there is no military solution to this conflict.
Jews against genocide,
not in our name. Jews against genocide, not in our name. Jews against genocide, not in our name. Jews against genocide, not in our name. Jews against genocide, not in our name. Jews against genocide, not in our name. Jews against genocide, not in our name. Jews against genocide, not in our name. Jews against genocide, not in our name. Jews against genocide, not in our name. Jews against genocide, not in our name. Jews against genocide, not in our name. Jews against genocide, not in our name. Jews against genocide, not in our name. Jews against genocide, not in our name. Jews against genocide, not in our name. Jews against genocide, not in our name. Jews against genocide, not in our name. Jews against genocide, not in our name. Jews against genocide, not in our name. Jews against genocide, not in our name. Jews against genocide, not in our name. Jews against genocide, not in our name.
Occupation now! End the occupation now! End the occupation now! End the occupation now! End the siege of Gaza 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 now! Not in our name! Not in our name! Not in our name! Not in our name! End the occupation now! End the occupation now! End the occupation now! End the occupation now! End the siege of Gaza now! End the siege of Gaza now! Not in our our name. Not in our name. Not in our name. Not in our name. Not in our name. End the occupation now. Jews against genocide.
Are you all with IJV?
Yeah, we are all with Independent Jewish Voices, a national level organization that advocates in solidarity with Palestinians and for peace and justice for all.
Why is it so important for Jewish people to stand up against the Israel occupation and bombing of Gaza?
It's absolutely essential that Jewish people speak out against the occupation and the siege on Gaza, because there is a narrative that's been told to Jewish communities in Canada for 75 years now that our safety depends on the occupation of Palestinians, and that is simply not the case, and it is completely contrary to our Jewish tradition for justice and for mending the world. We are here to show Jewish Canadians and leaders of Jewish community organizations and Canadian politicians who are attending this conference that is platforming racist speakers. One speaker who published an illustration of a Palestinian face on a bug getting squished by an IDF boot. It's completely unacceptable. It is the genocidal language that was used against our people, and it is absolutely imperative that we say never again means never again for everyone, and that is now for the Palestinians, and it is essential that Jewish Canadians speak out.
Thank you. There's been many pro-Palestine protests, not just in Canada, but across the world, that have been labeled as pro-Hamas. Do you think narrative like this is to distract from the occupation and maybe disempower the pro-Palestine movement?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think that there has been a lot of reporting, particularly in Anglo-Canadian media, without any context of the occupation, or that this has been such an extremely deadly year already for Palestinians under the Israeli fascist government that is explicitly working towards the extermination and displacement of Palestinian people. They've been very clear about using this kind of fascist language. We need to understand it, we need to respond to it, and we need to understand the events of the last week in the context of 75 years of Nakba.
Thank you. And lastly, I've seen cops say to you, you're going to get arrested if you keep chanting, if you stay on private property. Why are you willing to take that risk?
We are here for our communities. We are here for Palestinian solidarity and liberation. And this is an anti-Semitism conference. And as Jews, we think we very much have a place and a voice in this conversation. And if this is the only voice that we're afforded here, then this is the voice that we will take.
And sorry, if I could ask one more question. Does ending the occupation provide the safety for not just Palestinians, but Israelis as well?
Our safety depends on mutual liberation, and there is no military solution to safety for Israelis and Palestinians. So we are absolutely behind ending the occupation, and we absolutely think that that is an advancement for the safety of Jewish Israelis as well as Palestinians. Yeah, does anyone else want to speak?
Maybe just speak a bit louder if you can. What kind of humanitarian and diplomatic action do you think that the government should take?
We think that the government of Canada has a lot of measures at its disposal. We've seen Melanie Joly meeting with Israeli officials this week. The Canadian government absolutely has to pressure Israel to stop the bombs, to reopen crossings, to turn the water back on, to turn on the electricity, and to stop mass targeting millions of civilians in their current actions.
What do you think of the government saying they don't have the ability to open a humanitarian corridor in Palestine, Gaza right now?
Israel has complete control over Gaza right now. We see that from the way that they shut off electricity, water, and food to the entire region. So it's all in Israel's hands.
Okay, thank you. Those are my questions. Is there anything you want to add? Yeah, go ahead.
We are horrified that this conference is gathering to push an agenda in our name that reinforces the language we've been hearing in Israel over the last week, that we know is dehumanizing language that prepares the way for genocide. We are horrified to hear and to see the language that we know as Jews paves the way for genocide being used by the Israeli state towards Palestinians. We are horrified that hundreds of our fellow Canadian Jews are gathering here to encourage the Canadian government to support the Israeli state's so-called right to self-defense, which we know is code for not calling for a ceasefire, for not calling for an end to violence, for supporting the Israeli state in preparing to commit genocide against Palestinians. We're here representing a national community of over 600 Jews as part of Independent Jewish Voices who believe that there is no military solution to this conflict, who believe the only way we can all be safe is by ending the occupation, is by turning back on the water, turning back on the power, and facilitating the way to peace in Gaza by calling for a ceasefire now. We're calling on our government to end blanket support for Israeli violence and to call forcefully for an immediate ceasefire in the region.
What do you think about the temperature right now? Is that okay for audio? What do you think about the temperature right now in terms of, sorry, is that okay? Sorry, just, there is a lot of report of, hate, anti-Semitism towards the Jewish community. We've seen this terrible stabbing that took place in a 6-year-old in Chicago. A woman on Twitter I saw today in Ottawa said that she's wearing a hijab was spit on. So we're really seeing the polarization and this sort of build-up. How are you feeling about the way that this is being talked about in our society today?
We are horrified by the rise in anti-Semitic and Islamophobic violence that we're seeing across the world right now. We grieve for those who've been targeted by both anti-Semitic and Islamophobic violence. And we believe that when anti-Zionism, which is a political stance, is lumped in with anti-Semitism as a part of the definition of hate speech and hate acts, that shuts down the possibility for peaceful resistance to political violence and encourages violent resistance, encourages hate. We believe that a definition of anti-Semitism that includes anti-Zionism makes all Jews less safe. We are angry that the institutions that are supposed to represent and support and keep our communities safe are instead leveraging the idea of anti-Semitism and this moment of increasing anti-Semitism for political gains and sacrificing our safety by doing that.
So you're saying that people that equate the criticism of the state of Israel with anti-Semitism
are making Jews less safe. We think there needs to be room to criticize the state of Israel in a way that is distinct from being associated with hating Jews. We, as Jews, who fiercely criticize the state of Israel, embody the plain reality that it's possible to love Judaism, love Jews, love the Jewish people, and strongly criticize the state of Israel.
Can I ask, so when did you come here? What's the purpose of your blocking the doors?
We're here because we will not accept the institutions that are organizing this conference, bringing members of our community together in our collective name and pressuring the Canadian government to enforce and adopt an idea of anti-Semitism that includes anti-Zionism, because we believe that idea of anti-Semitism makes all Jews less safe. We believe that these institutions are failing us and failing our communities and putting us in greater danger by manipulating the idea of anti-Semitism, by manipulating this rising moment of anti-Semitism for political gain. and they're doing it at the expense of our people's safety.
Can I just say, what would you like to see instead? What type?
We would like to see
Sorry, just give me a second. Just knock my camera guy a little bit. A little bit of my fault. Sorry. What would you like to see in terms of the discussion?
We would like to see our Jewish community coming together to pressure the Canadian government to call for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza, in Israel, in Palestine. We believe that as Jews, we know that the solution to violence cannot be genocide. We see the signs. We know that what's being prepared right now in Gaza is genocide, and we believe it's our collective duty to stop genocide wherever we see it. And we also believe that we know that genocide will not make us safer.
Can I get your name?
My name is Jonathan McFedrin-Waitzer. I'm a member of Independent Jewish Voices Canada.
Is that who's organizing the entire protest here?
Independent Jewish Voices Canada. That's right. We're a national level Jewish organization, Jews across Canada who are fighting in solidarity with Palestinians.
My name's. This conference is about anti-Semitism, the actions of the Israeli government oppressing the Palestinian people with bombs, cutting off their electricity and water, bombing their hospitals, and the occupation will just breed anti-Semitism because it's no longer a secret. Everybody knows what's going on between the Israelis and the Palestinians. And if they're really concerned about anti-Semitism, they're not going to so blatantly oppress Palestinians and then pretend that it's just okay. It's not okay. Everyone knows it's not okay. And that only is going to increase hatred of Jews. So they're not protecting us. It's a very hypocritical concept of what's going on in this conference. It's really about Israel. It's not about anti-Semitism. And we don't believe it for a second. Because Zionism, in practice, promotes anti-Semitism in reality.
I just can't. I'm struck by there seems to be extreme views on all points, and there doesn't seem to be much of a. Is there anything that you agree on in terms of what their mission's about, or in terms of, I'm wondering if you could condemn Hamas as well. You know what I mean? Like, I just feel like there's so much polarization, and that is.
It's not about. Let's talk about
violence. I mean, it's contributing to rising hate language, rising hate crimes.
Okay.
I mean, I'm sure you're concerned about these things.
But if I got my foot on your neck, okay.
If you're using this as a metaphor for the Palestinians.
If I have my foot on your neck, whose job is it to reduce the violence and reduce the anger? It's my job. And so we're saying violence is the natural cause of oppression. Violent oppression breeds violent resistance. If you want to stop the violence, then stop the violent oppression. Very simple.
And you feel that that's something that the state of Israel needs to do, needs to take seriously?
And the state of Canada, because every bomb that drops on Gaza has a Canadian flag on it. We've sponsored the bombs, and we've sponsored the Israeli military response. So Canada has a bigger role than we might acknowledge.
Attendees of this conference, either themselves members or leaders in Jewish communities, recorded this week of Palestinians as grotesque bugs being squashed by the group of the IDF, and that is just very clearly redeploying genocidal imagery and language that has been used on our communities as Jews before, and we need to step up and speak out. It's really horrifying to see Jagmeet Singh as a speaker for this conference. We would think and expect, especially given the events of the NDP conference this past weekend, that there would be louder voices within the NDP telling Jagmeet that this is not just an opportunity to show allyship with the Jewish community. This is actually a very intense political lobbying moment in support of Israel while they are forcibly displacing 1.1 million people and attempting very clear and effective genocide. There are other political speakers here as well, and there's a big, I think, meetup on the Hill tomorrow. It's just a very clear lobbying opportunity that we felt it was absolutely imperative to disrupt.
Jews against genocide. Not in our name. 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 Jews against genocide. Not in our name.
Genocide!